Howdy, y'alls. Welcome back to ANTH 205. It's me, Dr. E, here to help you out. Um, so this is our first actual, get into a module, get into our readings video. And, yeah, this will kind of set the tone and, what to kind of expect from me as your instructor for this class. Um, yeah, this week, Module 1 is really just kind of all about the basic understandings. Why do we even do archaeology? And kind of some historical shifts in the discipline. Everything from the classic adventurers like Lloyd Stevens and others that have gone out to find these ancient civilizations. It's very romantic, very Indiana Jones, which is really not what we do, as you might understand. Lots of folks, early adventurer archaeologists were really nothing more than glorified tomb raiders. They wanted to go find all the cool stuff and bring it back and put it in museums for their own, superiority, if you would. Now, archaeology's come a long way since then. Be sure to check out the video about the new archaeology. And that kind of helps explain, as well as some of our readings, kind of this big shift between what we call processual archaeology and post-processual archaeology. Now, processual is, I don't know, you can think about like the 1800s, early 1900s, and archaeologists were really focused on kind of the elite, the pharaohs, the kings, the queens, all right, the big stuff, the big fancy. Ooh, well, that has some value. It's good to know about those things, but it's not a very complete picture, is it? It's just focusing in on those big elite things. Now, in the 60s and 70s, we had a major shift. Archaeologists started getting really fed up with, well, this really, it's a philosophical question. It was really what spurred the debate. And it continues to this day, all right? Um, but, what about the everyday person, all right? Just because you understand and have all the intimate details of, some pharaoh's tomb, and you recognize their place in history, that's really not giving you any insight into the daily lives of ancient Egyptians. Okay, and that's really where this post-processual movement is focused. You want to understand what the everyday life was. All right, not just for the kings and queens and pharaohs and yada yada, right? But the everyday person. Okay, what sorts of everyday people were there? I mean, because clearly not everyone's the same. And so you'll find all sorts of different specializations. My brother is a classic Roman archaeologist, and he's worked at Pompeii for many years. And one of the things that he does there is actually work in the merchant quarter. And he studied, well, not anymore, but back in the day, in the 90s. He was all about trying to understand what was being traded from where for what, between what sorts of people, because there wasn't a single type. And so, yeah, it kind of gives you an idea of what post-processual is more about. I would argue that it's all about developing a more holistic perspective on ancient civilizations or past societies. Okay, so yeah, that's all I'm going to say about processual and post-processual. I'm not going to drone on about it, but I do want to focus in on some of our other key things that are covered in our readings this week, just to give some insights and to share. Let me look at my notes here. Yeah, so I'm going to focus in on chapter 1 of our main text. And yeah, this is a good textbook. I like this one. I've actually had it used for other courses at other institutions. So 2 thumbs up. Now, uh, let me just. I should have started with this. What is a basic definition of archaeology? While my words may not be exact as our text, the basic gist is it's the study of past human societies through their material remains. Okay, the key thing is material remains. They're physical leftovers. Now that could be the things they make. That could be the intrusions they've made into the ground. Those are features. You can see where somebody built a house. Things like that. The house may not be there anymore, but you can still see where it was. Yeah, so it's all about the physical, the material remains. And so that's what archaeologists focus on, right? And trying to make sense of that, interpret that to make better sense, a more holistic sense of those past groups. Okay? So, kind of going over my notes here. There's some discussion about whether or not archaeology is part of anthropology. Well, according to me, it is. It's one of the five basic subdisciplines. You got cultural anthropology, biological anthropology, linguistic anthropology, and applied to some people. And then you got archaeology. Some people put the archaeology and the applied together. For example, in cultural resource management. That is a form of applied anthropology, right? It is a very specialized kind of subfield, which is all focused on trying to uphold legal mandates about conserving the past. Things like Section 106 and NAGPRA. Those things you'll learn about more in this class. You kind of, sorry, I get a little off track. I ramble. Bear with me. So, archaeology is all about understanding and interpreting the physical remains, material remains of past societies. Now, that kind of emphasizes we have a really strong association with history. Okay? But we look beyond history. Okay? History, technically, is everything that's happened since writing. Okay? And depending on what part of the world you're looking at, that could be 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years old. Okay? Now, we as archaeologists look before then, and that's prehistory. Okay? And that can literally be millions of years old. Okay? Think about early hominids, Australopithecines in Tanzania and stuff like that. You know, so we kind of have this basic division of prehistory and history. And go figure, if you pursue archaeology as a discipline, as a career path, you end up focusing, usually with a geographic focus and a temporal focus, right? So time, era, and place. For example, I've been a contract archaeologist and an academic archaeologist for quite a while. 20 years experience doing it. And, oh, I forgot my thought. Oh, where was I? My specialization is focused, it's pretty broad in the scheme of things. But geographically, I have a specialization in the East Coast from upstate New York to the Virgin Islands. All right, I've worked in every state along that corridor extensively. I've also had a specialization in the Pacific Northwest, and within that, we have several different environmental zones, such as high plateau desert, Great Basin, things like that. And my temporal interests are prehistoric, right? My particular bag, my thing is understanding how people use their wildlife resources from prehistory to today. Okay? So I not only look at it as an archaeologist, I look at it as a cultural anthropologist as well, as a biological anthropologist. Um, Pretty much everything except linguistics. But I'm going to try to focus on the archaeology for this class. So, strong association with history. So we are historians, but at the same time, we look beyond history, all right? Because there was time before people started writing. Now, another key thing to archaeology, we are a science. We are a scientific discipline. Now, we're more than just a scientific discipline at the same time because we are focused on humanity and people. They're funny critters. Let me tell you, we do some strange things that don't necessarily fit empirical thought processes, all right, or empirical interpretation. So, while we are a scientific discipline, we also are a humanities discipline. We're bringing both of those things together to offer, again, another buzzword. Same buzzword again: holistic perspective. Okay. And within archaeology, you tend to have a basic division between academic archaeologists and professional archaeologists. Now, what's the difference between a professional archaeologist and an academic archaeologist? Well, academic archaeologists are really about furthering academic insights, laying out the knowledge that they gain through their scientific inquiries. Now, a professional archaeologist is usually what we call a cultural resource manager, CRM. And CRM folks are really, you could think of them as the blue collar archaeologist, right? They're the ones out there doing it every day to pay the bills. And you might be like, what? Well, yeah, we have various laws that require things called cultural resource assessment surveys. Usually anything involving any state or federal funds that disturbs the earth has to have someone like me come out and do a full phase one survey. So I'm going to go do background research, find out everything that has been there, right? And I'm actually going to go physically examine the parcel of land that's being developed. And, unfortunately, I'm limited to the boundaries of that. So you can also think of professional archaeologists kind of being salvage archaeologists, all right? We're the folks on the front lines that are doing it every day and trying to save as much of it as we can, okay? Yeah, I've worked on some really, really cool sites. I had a site in North Carolina with my old contract archaeology firm. And we had over 10,000 years of occupation in a single site. Okay? How cool is that? And you could see it all right? Not only that, it had been bulldozed, and so it was crushed into about a 3-inch horizon of strata. You could see what we call archaic peoples. These are the most ancient peoples in the New World. We're talking 10, 12,000 years ago. We have kind of more recent, what we often call woodland period. Depends on the region, right? Let me be clear. Some of these terms that I use are very region specific. Like out here in the Pacific Northwest, we talk about the Holocene and things like that. Well, back east, we talked about archaic period, woodland period, and contact period. Okay? So those sorts of terms are always going to be relative to your geographical focus, okay? And obviously time period. But in this one site, you could see where there were lots of early bifaced scrapers and projectile points, and then you see them get progressively more refined. They go from big chunky things to more medium size and intricate to smaller and fine detailed. So kind of a visual representation. You can think of like the archaic as the big chunky points, the woodland the medium points, and the contact the tiny points. not only that, we could see how each of the time periods had interacted with each other. So we found folks that had used archaic projectile points and reshaped them in the woodland period. How cool is that? Right? And even reshape them again in the contact period. Moreover, in the contact period, we had evidence of a 1600s yeoman farmstead where they had taken prehistoric lithics and used those as chinks in the foundation of this little cabin that had been built. And it was a contact period, so we were actually seeing relatively modern glass silicates being napped by local indigenous peoples, right? I mean, so cool. Sorry, I get all geeked out on this. 10,000 years and 3 inches, all right? And our job was to save as much, to document it as much as possible and save as much as we could. All right. Unfortunately, archaeology is a destructive process. When you go excavate, all right, when you go disturb the earth, it's all over. Right? Context is lost. With every little scrape, shovel full, it just gets erased. Okay, not technically erased. It gets disturbed. Okay, and once something's disturbed, you don't have it. It's in situ context. And that's really important for us. Okay, if somebody's gone and dug a hole through the middle of your site, that's going to impact your ability to interpret the data from the site. Hope that makes sense. So anyway, enough about my awesome site that I worked on for 2 years. Looking back at my notes. There are different. So I've talked about geographical and temporal focus. We also have kind of different branches of archaeology itself, like biological archaeology, underwater archaeology, biblical archaeology. Like these should be pretty self-evident what they're actually about. Okay, yeah. So those are good things to recognize. As an undergrad, I actually studied maritime archaeology, which led me to a little underwater archaeology. I got a dive in, was it? Worked on a site, Fort Edward on Lake George, upstate New York. And we were doing underwater archaeology. I spent a summer diving on a double-masted schooner wreck that's right out in the water from the fort. If you've read Last of the Mohicans, it's in the story. All right, it's also in the movie. Anyway, some other things I wanted to touch on for this video. I realize I'm droning on, so I'm going to try to reduce this a bit. Be careful about pseudo archaeology, stuff like Von Daniken and stuff like that. Not scientific, not empirical. You might call it an alternative perspective, right? Doesn't mean it's not fun, though, right? I love watching Ancient Aliens on what is it, the History Channel or something like that. But I watch it and point out all the ridiculousness in it. I'm like, that's real. Nope, that's made up. Also want to focus in kind of on ethics. When I was a kid, I didn't know any better. When I found a projectile point, I picked it up and I started a collection. But I was a 10-year-old kid and didn't know better. Today, I never would I keep anything that I found out there. And so I really suggest to you that you share that sort of perspective with anyone else that might be picking up things that are old. and have maybe some significance. Now, that doesn't mean every projectile point that you find out there, every flake, every chip piece of ceramic or pottery is significant. Most of it isn't. All right, most of it's a dime a dozen. I mean, we're not finding new types of projectile points. Okay, they've been, for the New World and the Old World, they've been fairly well defined. Now, there is the offhand chance that you might find something that's never been found before, and that's more the point, that you need to go through due process. Okay? If you ever find stuff like that, contact local county historical society, local universities, anthropology departments, or if they have a research department in a museum. Those are good folks to contact to clue them in to anything that you might find or to gain insights into it. Because if you find it on your own land, it's yours, right? I lived in Switzerland for 6 years, and I found Roman concrete in my garden. Okay, and yes, I still have it, but keep in mind it's a little piece of concrete. There was nothing else there, and I could actually assess that at the time. Yeah. One last thing. Be sure to check out the goals of archaeology in our reading for this week. Right, these are important to understand and just to know. I'm not going to go over them for you right here. I've done enough going over and sharing stuff. So I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to have some more written portion to this announcement. Be sure to review it. And yeah, I'll see you all on the discussion boards. Take care. Bye.